Here I come. Hello, music fans, music collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I'm your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490am.com. Your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. You can also catch my show live on Alexa by saying, Alexa, play KMET Radio for your listening pleasure. On the program today, I welcome in legendary artist, music icon. We welcome in the great Tommy James. Tommy, Brian C., it's an honor to have you.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to talk with you.
Yeah, sorry, we had some technical difficulties. I appreciate your time here.
That's okay. No problem.
Tommy, you grew up admiring the heavyweights of rock and roll, Buddy Holly, Elvis. Hearing these performers at an early age, is that really what inspired you in becoming a performer yourself?
Well, it sure was. I loved all those first-generation rock and rollers. And when I was a little kid, when I was 9 years old, I got my first guitar and learned everything I could on the radio and on records. And all I wanted to be when I grew up was one of those rock and roll guys. And the good Lord made it so.
Well, Tommy, it was 1961. You were 14 years of age, and that's when you first recorded Hanky Panky. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I was. We did it. I did it with my high school mates at the time, and we went into the. I grew up in Niles, Michigan, a little town in southern Michigan, and the local radio station WNIL was where we recorded Hanky Panky, and this would have been in 1963. I was actually 16 years old, and we recorded it for a DJ named Jack Douglas, who was starting a little record company. And we recorded it in 63, and, it did okay locally, but we had no distribution. And so the record was kind of forgotten about. And then in 65, I graduated from high school, and I took my band on the road. And in early 66, right in the middle of my 2 weeks, we were playing a little dumpy club in Janesville, Wisconsin. And right in the middle of my 2 weeks, the guy got shut down for not paying his income tax. So we were sent home and feeling like real losers, but that's how the man upstairs works, because as soon as I got home, I got a call that changed my life, that record Hanky Panky I'd made 3 years earlier, was sitting at number one in the city of Pittsburgh. And they had bootlegged it and sold 80,000 of them in 10 days. And they tracked me down and asked me to come to Pittsburgh and do some local television and a couple of appearances. So I went to Pittsburgh by myself. I couldn't put the band back together. And I sort of grabbed the first act I could find, and they were a club group playing a club in Pittsburgh, and they became the new Shondells. And a week later, we were in New York selling the master, and ended up at Roulette Records, and they took it to number one, and that literally was the start of my career. It all happened so fast I couldn't hardly believe it. Only in America.
Man, that's amazing. So you mentioned Roulette Records, Tommy. You wrote in your book, Me, the Mob, and the Music. Can you talk a little bit about Roulette Records and Morris Levy?
Sure. Well, of course, Me, the Mob, and the Music is our book that came out a few years ago. It's being turned into a movie. And essentially, it's an autobiography with about two-thirds of the book devoted to our crazy relationship with Roulette Records. And the reason it was crazy and scary a lot of the times is because, unbeknownst to us, when we signed with Roulette Records, Roulette, in addition to being an independent record label, was also a front for the Genovese crime family in New York, which made life real interesting for us. And while we were moaning, and I think we're alone now and all that stuff, behind us was this very dark and sinister story going on that we couldn't talk about. And so roulette was a scary place to be in a lot of ways. But the odd part about it is, if we had gone with one of the major labels, that is one of the corporate labels, CBS or RCA or Atlantic, which we could have done, I think we would have been lucky to have been a one-hit wonder, because we would have had so much competition. And as soon as we, like if we'd have gone with CBS, as soon as we'd have signed with them, they would have turned us over to, an in-house A&R guy, and that's probably the last time anybody would have heard from us. At Roulette, they actually needed us. So the strange part was that we had so much success at Roulette Records that we constantly had to make a decision, even though we weren't getting paid, crime doesn't pay. As soon as we realized we weren't getting our royalties at Roulette, we almost left, but that would have been dangerous too. I'm glad we stayed, because we ended up at Roulette with 23 gold singles and 9 platinum albums, and we did about 110 million records at Roulette, because they needed us and made us the top dog there. So I think in the end we made the right decision, but it was a very strange relationship.
I mean, look at the hits, like you mentioned, Hanky Panky, Crystal Blue Persuasion, Crimson and Clover, Moni Moni, I Think We're Alone Now. I mean, it's just on and on, dragging the line. I mean, it's an iconic career, Tommy. So Morris Levy must have been ecstatic to have you on his roster.
Well, Morris Levy, of course, was the head of the label, and every bit a thug, but he was our thug. Basically, Morris was an amazing character. In fact, he's really the star of the show, and it comes right down to it. In the movie, it's going to be turned into a film, and he really becomes, in many ways, the star of the show, because everybody was we were like terriers dancing around, waiting to get orders from Morris Levy. It was quite a relationship, and I guess you could call it sort of a twisted father-son relationship. We got pretty close.
You did, right?
Yeah, and one of these days, I told you I'm going to ask the good Lord what He had in mind, because here, every time I go to say something really bad about Morris, I kind of stop myself, because if it hadn't have been for Morris Levy, there wouldn't have been a Tommy James, and that's really the truth. So it's a very strange. I have very mixed feelings about the whole thing.
Well, Tommy, you mentioned there was a lot of competition back in the 60s with all these great bands. Did you have, a bunch of rivalry, a lot of enemies, jealousy because of your success back then?
Well, there was some of that, but, a lot of these people became my friends. I mean, one of the acts that, for example, the Rascals, that we had such competition, head-to-head competition for all the same radio stations. We actually had to stagger our records. Felix and I staggered our records so that we wouldn't directly bump heads on radio stations. We'd kind of put our records out in between theirs, and vice versa, and stuff like that. So it was a pretty good-natured jealousy, competition, I guess you could say. It was pretty good-natured all the way around. So many of those acts, we worked together. We had every so often we'll do a show with a couple of those acts on it, and we actually have more fun backstage than on stage.
We're talking to the legendary Tommy James. Tommy, the last album with the Shondells, I believe, was Travelin'.
Yeah.
And many people in the music business consider that your best. Would you say that was your best album?
Well,
it was very edgy.
It probably was.
Album.
Yeah, it was our most edgy album as far as being a sort of progressive sound for us. There were no tricks on it. It was just kind of raw energy, and really had a lot of fun making that album. The Shondells and I have stayed in touch, the original guys, over the years. And the group that I'm working with now has actually been with me since, the late 70s, early 80s. And so they've been with the group that I have with me now has been with me for, several decades. And what's interesting is I look out at our concert crowd now, because we play all over North America. I generally don't go out of North America, but I look out into the audience and I literally see 3 generations of people. It really is quite amazing. And I never thought I'd be doing this I never thought in 1966 that I'd be doing this in 2020, believe me.
Well, your music really stands the test of time, Tommy. My favorite song is Crystal Blue Persuasion. And I believe that song was played in that famous Netflix series, Breaking Bad, in the last episode. Can you talk about Crystal Blue Persuasion? How was that song created?
Sure. Well, Crystal Blue was actually one of the hardest records I ever produced. It was from the Crimson and Clover album. And a kid came to me. We were doing a concert down at a college in Atlanta, and I remember a kid came up to me with a poem called Crystal Persuasion. And I just thought that was such a wonderful combination of words. When you're a songwriter, you're always looking for word combinations that sound interesting. You can find them on a billboard or matchbook cover. You never know where they're going to pop up. And so that just hit me between the eyes. And we went back to the hotel and we wrote it that night. We wrote a song, and I needed one extra syllable in there, so we put Crystal Blue Persuasion. And went in the studio, and we completely overproduced it. I must say, we had a whole set of drums, we had 3 guitars, we had a couple of keyboards. And it was just, when we got finished with the record, we listened to it and said, that wasn't the song we wrote, which was sort of a Latin feel to it. So we spent the next, 3-4 weeks experimenting with pulling things out until we ended up with nothing but a bongo drum and a conga and a flamenco guitar and just a little trace of organ, and and we had to completely unproduce the record to make it sound like Crystal Blue. And then finally, that was it. We agreed on it that's the song we wrote the way we wrote it. So it took a long time to put that record together.
That's a beautiful song, and I believe that was Morris Levy's favorite song.
It was. Boy, you did your homework. Yes, it was.
Now, is it true that on the song "I Think We're Alone Now," was there originally heavy breathing on that song?
Yes, there was.
Well,
we got banned.
I
Think We're Alone Now got banned in Detroit for being a dirty record. Did you know that? I always laugh because the number 1 record at the time was "Let's Spend the Night Together" by the Rolling Stones. So just a little rock and roll hypocrisy right there. Yeah, we had to take out the breathing, and we had to change the album cover because they thought that was dirty too. So don't ask me. I just work here, Brian. You know what I mean? I just do what I'm told.
Well, that song was also recorded by, Tiffany and was it Billy Idol?
It has just been re-released by Green Day.
Oh, has it been?
Green Day. Billy Joe Armstrong just recorded it. He was isolated and, quarantining like we're all doing right now. And he did a cover of "I Think We're Alone Now" and put it out, and it's top 20 already.
Really? Wow,
yeah.
I got to check that out. It's
going to be a hit all over again.
Man, if it wasn't for you, he's got to pay you royalties. You know what I mean? But so what happened with the breakup of the Shondells? Were you suffering burnout?
Well, basically, we didn't intend to break up at that moment. We had just been hitting the road hard and really hitting it for about almost 5 years. And if we weren't in the studio, we were writing. If we weren't writing, we were on the road. And it was really starting to get to everybody. And we just basically took 6 months off. And I started producing other groups. I produced Patty Austin and Exile and a couple other groups. And little by little, we just didn't get back together. They started they started a recording studio back in Pittsburgh, and they started doing their thing. One of them became started a big tool and die outfit that got involved with the Defense Department, started making missiles, if you can believe that. And
wow.
So everybody kind of went their own way. And I produced a group called Neon, who for Paramount Records, and ended up taking them on the road. And so that sort of evolved into the group that we have now. And so it's been a long, long road. And but we're still friends, and we see each other every now and then.
So you're entering really like your 51st year in music, right?
Yeah, actually 1966 was our first year, so this is the 54th year.
54th.
54
wow.
in the major leagues, and then, I started out quite a while before that, playing locally back in Michigan. So I started my first band, believe it or not, when I was 12 years old, 1959, and my first gig was when I was 13 in 1960. That's how long I've been doing this. I've had the same job since I was 12. Think about that.
Well, I mean, you're blessed. I mean,
think about being a paper boy all those years. That's the equivalent.
I can ask you so many questions. You have such a long, amazing history. Just tell us a little bit about the impact Hubert Humphrey had. Did he have an impact on Crimson and Clover? Now that was your biggest
Hubert Humphrey, he was
date,
vice
right?
president. We did his campaign in '68 when he was running for president, and we were the first rock act to hook up with a politician. That had never happened before. And
really?
Hubert
So
Humphrey, of course, was
one.
Huh?
You were the first band to hook up with a politician.
Right. Well, that's
wow.
true. And Hubert Humphrey, of course, was vice president running for president, and they called us. His office called us to do the camp. We ended up doing the whole campaign with him. And he asked me to be, I was 21 years old, he asked me to be president's advisor on youth affairs, believe it or not, whatever the hell that is. I said to him something smart like, believe me, the youth of America are having affairs, and I'm just the boy to look into it. He thought that was funny. But at any rate, he ended up writing the liner notes to the Crimson and Clover album.
Huh. And that's your biggest sale to date?
Well, the Crimson and Clover single was the biggest single we ever had of all. We had 32 chart singles on Billboard, and Crimson and Clover was the biggest selling. We did 5.5 million singles right in the first part of 1969, and then since then we've done another 12 million pieces on different albums that have been out ever since then worldwide. So the whole thing, it's sold almost 17 million copies, Crimson and Clover, on various album packages and of course when we had it out. So it's been down a lot of roads, just like I have, and of course then Joan Jett had a #1 record with it, and Prince put it out not too long before he died, and had it also went #1. It was the first digital. It was on his album Lotus Flower. And we've had so many covers of Crimson and Clover. Dolly Parton and I did a duet of Crimson and Clover. It's been covered by so many artists. It's just been an amazing record.
Amazing. So the list is 23 gold singles, 9 platinum albums, and over 100 million records sold worldwide. That is an amazing accomplishment, Tommy.
Well, thank you so much. And it's... it's really the fans. I've said it so many times, but I mean it. It's between the good Lord and the fans that kept our longevity. is the reason for our longevity. And I'm just amazed at the concerts and the number of people and the different generations, and it's really been a wonderful ride.
So we're going to play, we have a couple of minute mix that we're going to play, and maybe you can explain it when we're done. Is that okay?
Sure.
Sean, take it away. Tommy James. And that was Tommy James, Cinnamon Girl, Hey Sa Lo Nay. Tommy, you want to explain to the audience a little bit about those
that
two
was all
songs?
over the place. Wow. Well, what I think I just heard was a combination of one record, and then you cut to another record, right?
Right, right. It was a little mix.
Yeah. Well, those were 3 songs, and what it really boiled down to is we released 2 singles. You know, we have an album out called Alive that we released last year, and then this year we just released 2 singles. And the first one was Hey Sa Lo Nay, which was an old Northern Soul record that made it in England back in the 70s, and I swear if I'd have known about that record, it would have been the follow-up to Moni Moni. That's really the truth. Sort of a party rock thing. And then the other one was a combination of Sunshine of Your Love by Cream and Cinnamon Girl by Neil Young. And they work beautifully together. The 2 riffs, guitar riffs, fit beautifully together like a hand in glove. And so we quickly put those together. And we never released it officially as a single. We just put them out digitally. All over the internet, and Spotify and iTunes and Pandora and all the rest. It's the first time I ever just released a record digitally. Never done that before. And it's being received really well, and we're really glad to have it out. It's amazing to be able to do that, where you don't even need a record company to release stuff now. You just throw it out.
Well, they're telling me I have 1 minute left, Tommy. Let us know where we can hear you, your current projects.
Sure. Well, of course, our new movie, Me, the Mob, and the Music, from the book, we're casting now. That's coming. That'll be about another 18 months. And then our new album, Alive, and I have my own show on Sirius XM every week on 60s on 6. Every Sunday from 5 to 8 Eastern Time. It's called Getting Together. Come listen to us on Sirius XM.
And you're going to be performing at the Sopranos.com telethon?
That's correct. It's going to be one of these virtual things because everybody's hunkered down. But yes, that's going to be later today, about 3:00. I'm going to be performing Crystal Blue Persuasion. So if they come to our website, you'll be able to see it, just TommyJames.com.
And the great Tommy James is back in full force. Tommy, thank you so much for being with me. I want to wish you a happy birthday. Your birthday is coming up next week. Next
Wednesday, the 29th, yes. And I want to thank you, Brian. It's great talking with you.
Oh, likewise. And again, most importantly, stay safe, you and your family.
Thank you. You too.
Take care of yourself, buddy.
Bye now, Brian.
Bye-bye. That was the legendary performer, Tommy James and the Shondells. Everyone, be well. Stay bunkered in. Be safe. We'll see you next week. Happy collecting to all.